All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Wednesday. It's hump day. It's the middle of the week already. And yeah, I always feel kind of good, I guess. Kind of made it through a good chunk of the week. I can't believe it, though. That election is coming up so soon. And I probably will vote tomorrow. We have early voting here in Maryland. So I guess, yeah, it's there. And yeah, I feel stressed because I know whoever wins is going to make me unhappy. See if I can get myself a little. It doesn't look like I'm as sharp as usual. I guess I am. I was just going to adjust my video sharpness, acuity. It looks okay, I guess. Sometimes it's a little bit vague there. What is that about? Is that a problem for you? By the way, call in. Yeah, tell me. 240-242-5646. I love to hear when people have issues or tell me there's a problem. I don't love to. Actually, I don't want to hear about it. But I do want to hear about it. I just don't want them to happen. I don't want there to be issues. But perhaps there are. I don't know. Hopefully none with the video. It looks okay. I think I've been a little bit sharper. Maybe it's better if you can't see me that closely. Got some good calls yesterday from Charles and Stephanie in that order. So hope we'll get some more today. Kind of makes my life, I have to say, it really does make my life a lot easier when you join me. Just a little less work for me, bottom line. So always nice. And to share views. And we'll talk about that, the importance of kind of listening to others. I got kind of called out for allegedly, arguably not being as open to the opinions of Republicans and conservatives as I claim we should be. So we'll get into that perhaps just a little bit later on in the program. I want to start with where I always do, and that is the tragedy of Gaza, the tragedy that the U.S. bears so much responsibility for the ongoing genocide. And I was thinking, at some point it feels old. I mean, it's not for the people who are being massacred, not for the families that continue to lose loved ones, children, moms, dads, grandparents. For them, it's just one horror after another. And so in Lebanon, we'll start there. This is CNN. I mentioned to you folks yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, that the corporate media, the mainstream media, whatever you want to call it, the lamestream media, who called it? Was it Trump? I think it was that a W line, the lamestream media? Limbaugh, who's, dead, not lamented by me. The corporate media has actually started to really pay attention, I believe, to what Israel is doing with our weaponry, and I'm glad of that. So this is actually from CNN. I'm not referring to an Arab country's media, but actually the CNN, Clinton News Network. What does CNN stand for? I don't even remember. That was the old Turner News, right? But now it's called CNN. Anyway, Israel strikes Lebanese city as top U.S. diplomat urges more Gaza aid. So we'll see if there's more Gaza aid. The problem is, even if there's Gaza aid, it's not getting through because Israel won't let it through. And there's a video there that shows a building being blown up. That's actually in Lebanon. So all of Israel borders are have been crossed by Israel, by the occupying forces. In Gaza specifically, where the genocide is in full bloom, we get this live update from CNN a couple of hours ago. Healthcare shortages in northern Gaza. Officials in northern Gaza warn of severe shortage in supply. So obviously that adds to the death count that region. And what this doctor had to say is just so awful. And it has to remind you of, if you're paying any attention or if you have any real historical background, what the Nazis did. There does seem to be pretty close sequel, right? This seems to be a pretty much of a part two, in some ways, a follow-up to what the Nazis did 80 plus years ago. So what Dr. Saleh says is we smell death everywhere, and we have nothing to provide for the patients and the CNN giving you the death count from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. 74 Palestinians killed yesterday, and the death toll now up to 4,792. And I mentioned sometimes the numbers seem a little bit squirrely, like I added up from yesterday to today, and I actually think I got 4,794. So I know they revise, and maybe there's some overlap, but the numbers are just horrific, absolutely horrific. So using the number that was provided by CNN, which I assume comes straight out of the Palestinian Health Ministry, we have a total of at least 42,792 Gazans killed by Israel. These are almost all civilians. Very small percentage are what they would call militants, and 74 Tuesday, 74 dead. So I don't know how. I mean, this to me is why I just cannot see the morality in voting for Kamala Harris. And I got into it a little bit with a Facebook friend, and a real friend, not just a Facebook friend, somebody who I count as a friend, somebody I know, I met, I've spent time with. I really enjoy their company. And they took issue when I called Harris a candidate who supports genocide. They said, that's your mistake. That's not accurate. And my response was, I really thought about, well, what's the best way to respond? Because, the evidence is so overwhelming that Israel is committing a genocide with our support. And, you could present headlines of hospitals flattened where it says the bombs were U.S. manufactured, U.S. supplied bombs. You can provide the evidence that the U.S. officials knew and kept from the public, the fact that Israel is preventing any humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza. And the reason the U.S. officials, the Biden administration, said that's not true was because if they had acknowledged it, they wouldn't legally be able to sell or distribute or supply more weaponry to Israel. So that's pretty much proof. There's the evidence that despite reports, very, very credible reports from multiple sources, that Israeli soldiers are shooting children in the head and in the chest, we continue to supply Israel. There's the evidence that Israel is using children as human shields. That hasn't changed hasn't stopped the pipeline of weaponry. There's the claims by Harris that she's working for a ceasefire, which is obviously false, because what you're doing is giving the weapons to the offensive power, the first world military that's committing the massacres with those weapons. So obviously it's a lie that she has to know is false. And she's telling it, which is, in fact, by telling that lie, more evidence of the genocide that the U.S. is committing. So I could present all that evidence, because it's overwhelming and just positive. But instead of doing that, because I've come to learn that my style of arguing, which to me is the best, the most persuasive way to convince people, which is to make a statement and then defend it with facts that support the statement. That so often doesn't work. People don't, they get overwhelmed by the facts. They can't process them. They're too horrific. It's too awful to think that we're giving guns to soldiers who use those guns to put bullets in the heads of children. That's really, really, really hard for people to accept. And so they reject it. And it's so strong, the evidence is so powerful, and it's so overwhelming that people just start closing their eyes to it. That's why I wonder sometimes if it makes sense to keep presenting day after day the death count. But I feel morally we have an obligation to witness it, to let everyone know this is the truth. And if you close your eyes to it, well, then you're closing your eyes to American-backed Israeli genocide. And that's your decision, but that's what you're doing. But if it's not effective, then I have to start questioning my style, my technique. Is there a more effective way? So I backed off. I said to the person who claimed she's not, Harris doesn't support genocide, you're wrong. Because for people to acknowledge that somebody that they are strongly supporting for president, to acknowledge, well, that person, my candidate, is a genocider, that's hard to do. People don't want to do that. So they can either acknowledge it or they can deny the facts. That's what we call cognitive dissonance, when your mind is confronted with two what you would consider to be mutually exclusive. I'm a good person. I support good people for president. I support Kamala Harris. She's a good person. Somebody says she's a genocider. She supports killing the mass there. Let me just turn my light on so we get a little bit better light here. So that's why maybe it wasn't as clear, because I have my light on, the image. So what do you do when you're confronted with these seemingly irreconcilable facts? I'm a good person. I back good people for president. I back Kamala Harris. She's a good person. Uh-oh, there's this evidence that she's supporting genocide. What am I going to do? Well, one thing I could do is stop backing Harris. But I don't want to do that. I put a lot of emotional and intellectual energy into justifying supporting Harris for president. So what else can I do? I'll deny it. I'll say, no, it's not true. She's not committing genocide. Hear this from, it's the same with the people who deny the fact of the global climate holocaust. It's exactly the same thing. You can't accept the reality, so you deny it. So my question to this person was, well, what would cause you to accept that, yes, Harris is supporting genocide? What do you need to see? What evidence, what would persuade you that she's pro-genocide? And there was no response. And finally, there was kind of a comment, that said to me, this person recognized, yes, she does support genocide, but the alternative is even worse. And then I come to what my answer is always, well, the alternative is really bad too. I don't buy that Trump is necessarily worse than Harris. What I do say is they're both unacceptable and we have to go in a different direction. And why people refuse to even attempt that is beyond me. The fact, when I say refuse, I mean people refuse to start moving en masse towards Jill Stein, and it frustrates me. And let me be real clear. I don't think Jill Stein's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't think she's all that in a bag of chips. I've met her. I've talked to her. I like Jill Stein. I think she's by far the best candidate. I think she would be a good president. She'd be much better than what we have experienced in recent decades. But all that said, no, she's pretty strong, leans into the identity politics, of gender, of race, of ethnicity, and I'm not a big believer in that. I believe in the politics of working people and victims of the she talks about empire a lot, which I like, and I think we should talk about victims of the empire, but based on there being actual victims. They're poor, they're homeless, they don't have good jobs, they're depressed, they've got high rates of cancer. That to me is the metrics, not the color of your skin necessarily. Are you being bombed? Yeah, then you're somebody who's a victim. So Americans can't, look, we're saddled with two terrible choices. This is from Tegan Goddard's Political Wire, and they have on their site, I think Tegan, I'm not sure, I guess that's a male, I think that's a man, I'm not certain. I think he does have, I don't think he has on his site a link that says you can, share, right? So I assume it's perfectly okay for me to put this isn't copyrighted or anything like that. It doesn't say Tegan Goddard on it, but I'll tell you it's Tegan Goddard. So Tegan Goddard, basically, I call this a toss-up, but if you look at the actual numbers at the top, he has Trump ahead by, he has Trump winning. You need 270, because there's 538. We got confused. So there could be a tie since it's an even number of electoral votes. 269 goes to the House, and then presumably Trump would win, right? Because the House is currently held by the Republicans. So, or actually it goes by state. Each state delegation gets a vote. And I think there are more states that are Republican. So it's not that each house, that would be a little fairer, I suppose. Obviously a better solution would be if you're going to have an electoral college at all, and there's a tie in it, at least go to the tiebreaker being popular vote, who got more votes total. But we don't do that. So Goddard has Trump winning with no toss-ups, right? And it's interesting, he gives Maine to Harris, but one electoral vote in Maine goes to Trump in the more Republican district there, the northern district, and then that's offset by one Nebraska district, Omaha, going to Harris. But in the end, Goddard has Trump winning. And I looked at this map and I was trying to think, well, do I buy this map? I wasn't automatically skeptical, but I went into this exercise this morning saying to myself, and by the way, please do call 240-242-5646. Would love to talk to you about your thoughts on the horse race. I don't always focus on horse race politics at all. That's not a big deal to me, but I thought today I would because it seems so incredibly close, the race. And I went into this thinking, and I still will walk away from today's program believing Harris has just the slightest hair's breadth of an advantage, right? Just like the width of a hair, right? Just that tiny little bit. I think, and yet, and part of that is recent polling from the purple states, if you will, the swing states. Suggests to me the most credible polls, Washington Post poll especially, but there was a couple of others that came out with her having a bit of an advantage in Michigan, Wisconsin. I think Pennsylvania's a dead heat. This race shows Michigan going to Trump. Of course, could it? Of course. I think what hurts her most in Michigan, of course, is her steadfast support for the genocide. There are many Muslim voters. They make up a decent percentage of the population in the Great Lakes state there, Michigan, and they're not going to, at least they're telling pollsters, we're not going to vote for Harris. I think they told MSNBC, not one of us, when is it Farah? Is that her name, Melissa Farah? I may be wrong about that. I thought her name, the woman I saw doing the interviews on MSNBC was Melissa Farah. They told her, not one of us. She could not find one Harris voter. She found Trump voters among the Muslim community that she spoke to, but not one Harris voter. So this could well be the case, and this could cost Harris the race, but she's not prepared, as we read yesterday, to modify her pro-genocide view, and that she costs her the race. Obviously, it's her fault, and I won't lose any sleep over her losing. I won't be happy about Trump winning, but I wouldn't be happy if she won. Do I buy that, though? So I look at this and I think, Michigan, I actually think Harris probably does win in Michigan. And then I said, okay, so then she wins. But then I looked at the numbers again, 296 minus 15, Trump still wins. 281, I guess, if I do the math right. So you got to get another 11 votes if you're going to see Harris winning. So I think she can get those, or 12, right? No, you have to get Harris 13 more, because 270 Trump wins. So even if Trump loses Arizona, he would still win. Even if he loses Arizona and Michigan, if this map is otherwise correct, he wins. But I think Georgia. I think there's a decent chance Harris wins Pennsylvania. I do think she wins Michigan. I do think she probably wins Wisconsin. So then if she wins Pennsylvania, which I think she has a decent chance, Georgia, she has a decent chance, Arizona, that wouldn't quite do it for her. So it's close, right? It's super, super close. I call it a toss-up, but in the end, I think she's going to get either Michigan or Pennsylvania or maybe both. And then there's Georgia and North Carolina, either of those two. So of those 4 states, I wouldn't be shocked. I'm going to hazard a guess that of the super, super duper toss-ups in this race right now, and I'm going to leave Arizona out of it, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. If you win 3 of those, I think you win. And I think Harris probably does. So that's my best guess. Don't bet. Don't even think about entering those betting markets. I certainly won't. I want to show you a different map. This is the Real Clear Politics map. This gives Trump a bigger advantage. This gives Trump Nevada as well, and Wisconsin, right? It puts both Nevada and Wisconsin in the Trump column. I'm not buying that. I get it. I mean, they're super close in those states. They're all so close. And I don't know what Real Clear Politics is looking at, but I think there may be a reversion to form, and Nevada at least will stay blue. So then again, you look at those other 5 states that I mentioned, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And I'm going to guess she gets 2 of those Great Lakes states, PA, Michigan, or Wisconsin, 2 of those 3, and probably Georgia. The big problem for Harris in Georgia, as I understand it, is black male voters. They're not feeling it. We heard that from President Obama. They're not feeling her. They're not feeling a woman president. My suspicion is enough of them will return to the fold. There's some other factors at play. We don't know what the abortion, how the abortion debate will play out. I do think it probably favors Democrats slightly, and you may not be seeing that in the polls. There's the argument that Trump tends to outperform polls. That didn't happen in 22. At least his candidates did not. May also be pollsters have figured out the Trump vote a little more accurately. So less than 2 weeks out, I'm going with very, very, very slight edge, Kamala Harris. Now, one reason I won't vote, I won't bet, I will vote, although I won't vote for either Harris or Trump. One reason I won't bet is because if I did bet, I'd probably bet on Harris, not because I want her to win, because I honestly, truly, believe me, I don't have a preference between those two. I find them both equally loathsome, equally unacceptable. So it's not like there's some secret in my heart of hearts hope that Harris wins. There isn't. But if I did bet, I would probably bet on Harris because I do think she probably wins. But if she lost, I would hear from my, people in my life who almost all are voting, or all of them, I guess, are voting for Harris, virtually all of them. And they would be really mad if they knew I voted on Harris and she lost, because they would say, well, you're a terrible gambler. You always get it wrong. So why would, they would say, bet on Trump. Bet on Trump, right? But I'll be honest with you, I couldn't do that because, I don't think he'll win. But also, I really can't root for, I can't root for either one. If I bet on Trump and it was super close, I'd probably be thinking, oh, go Trump, because I'd want to win my bet. Even if it was like $10, I'd still want to win my $10 back and then another $10. And I really wouldn't feel good rooting for Trump. But then again, I wouldn't feel good rooting for Harris to win either. Okay, from Emogi, good morning, Hal. I try to keep up the chat, and so I haven't seen chat lately, but I wonder if I've been missing it. Do you think there's any good to come optically to Shama Sawant's stated goal of sabotaging Harris is when I believe, Emogi, I could be wrong, that you're like me. You're supporting the Green. I believe that's Emogi's view. You're not supporting either candidate. So the concern Emogi, I believe, is expressing is that by Shama Sawant saying, hey, we're probably not going to win, or we're not going to win. In other words, Jill Stein isn't going to win, but at least we can take down Harris. And that's looked bad. Now, some people like it. The due dissidence bros, at least Keaton Weiss is like, this is what the Greens should be saying. They should be saying, hey, we can win. By winning means we take down one of the two major party candidates. I don't agree with that, saying it that way. I don't know if it's no, I wouldn't frame it that way at all. I think what we're saying is, hey, you can't stand either candidate, right? You Muslims, your people are being genocided by the current Democratic nominee. You can't vote for her, of course not. And you won't vote for her no matter what. But the Republican is as bad or even promises to be worse, so you can't vote for him either. So we're giving you an alternative. And this is the alternative that Americans should embrace. So that's the talking points I would like. I don't, look, the Green Party is going to be stigmatized no matter what, Emogi. I don't think this is going to change the dynamic. The dynamic is Democrats blame everyone but themselves when they lose. They point fingers at everyone but themselves when they lose. Never at their candidate. Well, if it was Bernie, they would blame Bernie, right? If Bernie were the nominee or had been the nominee in 2020 and lost, it would be Bernie's fault. It would be his supporters' fault. But as long as it's a corporatist, democratic, establishment, militarist figure like a Hillary or a Harris, yeah, it'll be the Green Party's fault. It'll be everyone's fault but the Green Party. We got a good column by everyone's favorite New York Times genocidal maniac columnist, Bret Stephens. He actually dopes out pretty well. We'll get to that. He says, Emogi, speakers on the Thinking Muslim podcast are also articulating as intentionally punishing the Dems. Well, I mean, I don't see it that way. I understand that's how the Thinking Muslims may frame it, but I don't see it that way. I just see it as, hey, the Democratic Party's policies are so bad, we can't support it. That's all. We're not punishing you exactly. We're just making a choice to vote for a candidate that we think is a good candidate who will do the right thing. I frame it a little bit differently. I'm not saying I'm really mad at you. I want to hurt you. I vote based on who I think is going to be the best president, with an understanding that in the past I have voted for what I would call, well, I actually thought Obama would be a good president when I voted for him. I was wrong about that. I thought that. I kind of hope Biden would be a decent president when I voted for him. But maybe that was a lesser of evil vote. I'll grant you that. I try not to vote lesser of evil. I try to vote for a candidate I really believe in. I didn't in 2016 believe in either candidate. I don't believe in either candidate in this race, either of the two duopoly unitary party candidates. But yeah, there'll be times when I'll say, okay, I don't like this candidate very much, but on balance, I think they're a lot less bad and maybe they'll do some good things. I don't say that about Harris. I say Harris is really bad. I don't like her at all. I'm not punishing her. I'm just not voting for a candidate that I think will be a terrible president. And then Emogi saying it's a strategic demonstration of power. Yeah, I get it. When we vote, we're saying this is what we want. And hopefully a lot of people want the same thing, peace, a fair deal for everyone, a clean, green environment. Okay, yesterday I went after Kamala, as I generally do, and this time for her new best friend, right? Her new, I guess, campaign buddy, Liz Cheney there. And you can see, look at them. They're just having a ball. They are just having fun. And poor Tim Walz, what about me? So that was my thumbnail for yesterday's program. And so I got a little heat for that because in the past I've been championing, talking to Republicans. I say, hey, we shouldn't demonize them. And I absolutely did. I was demonizing Liz. I was saying, hey, well, she is a demon. Torture apologist. Her policies are awful. She's pro-war. She's never met a war she didn't like. That's why she likes Kamala. So I got a little bit of there was a little gotcha moment there. Because here I'm saying Harris shouldn't be shouldn't be hanging out with Liz, and I'm getting this comment, right? I seem to recall you recently lecturing that we should be speaking to Republicans and not writing them off the way I wrote off Cheney. And then there's this ridiculous, this doesn't apply to women. Well, Liz Cheney, the woman. If it were Dick Cheney, I would say the same thing. It's not because it's a woman. Maybe it doesn't apply to Cheneys. But, again, I get it. You want to try to make an ad hominem attack and say, oh, you're sexist. That's why you've got a problem because Liz Cheney's a woman. No, I have a problem because she's a torture apologist and she voted almost lockstep with Trump, and she's a bad person, and she's 100% rating from the NRA and 100% anti-choice rating, and never showed empathy for victims of in our society. So that's why I don't. That's my problem. And Harris could be out there trying to appeal to the left and progressives and pro-peace activists, and she's not. So that's my problem. Anyway, there's more to it. I must have already said that by the end of the conversation, Republicans should be telling us that they're voting for Stein. No, I don't say that. I clarify this because I understood where they were going, which is, wait a sec, Hal, you're always saying we need to reach out to the other side. So why are you so angry at Harris for doing that? And here's the answer. And I got, I kind of made a little dig back. It's a very good catch by you and a worthy gotcha attempt. Well, yes, we should talk to Republican voters. We should talk to Republican rank and file. The goal is to try to build a coalition that is pro-poor, struggling, and working class Americans who vote for candidates in both parties, and both parties betray us, betray them. I'm not poor, struggling, and working class, so both parties betray the poor, struggling, working class. The goal is to unite against the elites in both parties and against the corporate, military, industrial class. And those people are Liz Cheney and Kamala Harris. They're together united against the coalition that I am trying to build here, who is trying to build, trying to come up with solutions. So they're the two wolves planning dinner, and the working people, the poor, the struggling, are the sheep. I'm saying the sheep need to unite against those wolves. I think that's clear. I think it was always clear, but I did think that was an interesting little way to view what I was saying. So I wanted to make that point. All right. More kind of social media stuff, because I got a lot from people I know and have really gave me some thoughts, some ideas about what's happening. So this is from a very, very well-regarded, highly regarded, and effective organizer whose biggest issue, not only issue certainly, but I think their biggest issue has been over the years, Medicare for All. And I actually invited them to join me on today's program, or yesterday's program. I was disappointed they didn't come on. And people don't seem uncomfortable coming on my program. I don't quite get that, but maybe they feel they're gonna have some gotcha moments with me. I don't know. I wish that weren't the case, but apparently it is. In any event, they didn't come on, which I'm sorry about, but I wanted to center what they wrote because I found it to be so interesting. By the way, 240-242-5646. And what they're saying is that this is a terrible, terrible time for progressive organizers, that we are losing. And there's those who do this for a living, have no hope of really making a difference. We have no hope anymore on the left in these progressive so-called spaces. And I've got this exact same feedback from others, but this was written very articulately, and it was written so I can copy it, share with you. So what, by the way, do I have the right? That doesn't look like the first page. This goes beyond. Okay, well, anyway, it's that career Democratic electeds, including many progressives, are destroying the groundwater in a complex ecosystem of actors and networks. What she's saying is people like Jamie Raskin, who is credited as a progressive, and so many others, because they're backing Israel, because they're not AOC, because they're not prepared to stand up to the Harris-Biden administration and say, we can't support you, we can't support this, we've got to stop this, because they vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be the leader, because they fall in lockstep. There's a void, there's a hollow at the very center of the organizing core. And people just don't want to be part of that anymore. They don't want to be organizing to elect genociders. And this is a huge reason why I just said I can't do this. I can't work for our revolution. Because they're ultimately a Democratic shill organization. They're out there trying to get people to vote for Democrats. It's not based ultimately on policy. Yes, they say they're trying to push Democrats to the left, and they're going to hold Democrats accountable. But they don't. They absolutely don't. Even when they try, they fail miserably. We see it just the other way. For example, Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman both went down in flames. And our evolution and whatever other progressive groups that are supposed to hold PDA couldn't do a damn thing about it, couldn't stop it. And yet they're now out there busting a hump, trying to bust a hump for Kamala. And why is that? Well, this is their job. They get paid to do that. They raise money by demonizing Republicans, by scaring you into believing the Republicans are even worse. But what they should be doing is pushing for real, meaningful, transformative change. And that will not come. It cannot come from the Democratic Party. And that's what this organizer recognizes. Okay, I don't care. This is just the person I was talking about who posted, why you should be supporting Harris for promoting Cheney. I don't care how you feel about Cheney. I get upset that you get so angry at Harris for accepting Cheney's support for Harris. I'm not even angry. I'm not angry. That's who she is. Kamala Harris is telling you who she is. She's comfortable with Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney, a rock-ribbed, neocon, corporatist, militarist, is the kind of person whom Kamala Harris feels very, very comfortable with. I'm saying that her policies, Cheney's policies, are awful, that they've made our country much, much worse. And those are exactly the same policies that Kamala Harris clearly supports, embraces, with some little tweaks. Yeah, she says she's for gun control, and Cheney isn't, and she's for reproductive rights, and Cheney isn't. So, okay, those are a couple areas that matter. I get it. But ultimately, where Cheney and Harris agree, and they agree on much more than they disagree, are the most important and most terrible problems we face. They agree on ecocide. Harris is totally in for fracking, and that's a big Wyoming industry. Harris is all in for endless proxy war with Russia, and so is Cheney. Harris backs the genocide. Cheney's a torture apologist. So I'm not angry. I'm just making the point that this is who Kamala Harris is. And therefore, you shouldn't vote for her unless those are your policies too. Don't expect anything different. Don't expect anything better than Liz Cheney if she's your choice. Every organizer I know who works with the Dems on transformative legislation is at the breaking point. That's because we're not getting anywhere. They're not getting anywhere. I say we, they're not getting anywhere. I used to try to do this. We're not getting anywhere. People who have dedicated their careers towards making Dems a viable option for progressive change are like, this ain't going to happen. There is a creeping and unshakable suspicion that the prospect of this kind of change is being destroyed now for decades to come. Okay, here's where I disagree with this. What the organizer is saying is that it's the support for Israel, or that there's so much support for Israel in the Democratic Party, it's making it impossible for us to work for any kind of other progressive change. But even if the Israeli Holocaust weren't happening right now, you still wouldn't get what you want from Democrats. I think I understand there's this, oh my gosh, I believe in the Democrats, they're better. I have to believe someone is on my side. But the Democrats have proven they're not. They're not on your side. In the end, AOC will will broadcast a love letter, a Valentine to Israel with Zionists rather than center the victims of the Israeli Holocaust in Gaza. That's your Democratic Party. Ultimately, the squad is going to vote in lockstep for Hakeem Jeffries to be their House leader. So I find it kind of amazing. Maybe this is why they didn't want to come on, because I would have said this. I would say, hey, how come you didn't get this a long time ago? They're not going to do what is necessary to make life better for the American public. That's not who the Democratic Party is. That's not who their electeds are. That's why we need to go in a very different direction. And then they concluded with this point. Because, I don't want to be too hard on this person, because what they're saying is true. There's no more hope. Progressive organizing among Democrats trying to push for progressive change within the party, trying to build a progressive party, that's not happening. I'm saying it's not happening because that's who the Democrats are, because they're the party of the billionaire class, just as the Republicans are the party of the billionaire class, just slightly different billionaires, and sometimes the same billionaires. I'm not saying she's wrong. It's true. The Democrats are now a force for harm, for evil. But I'm saying it predated the Israeli genocide in Gaza. That's just one very, very strong example of it. So my organizer is writing, anyone who doesn't get that the type of progressive coalitions across civil society and congressional offices, yeah, and there were, like Our Revolution, which I was part of, PDA, Rise Up. Anyone who doesn't get that they became a thing after 2016, if not 2008, is about to go bust. I got to believe that's true. They are going bust because of genocide. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it. People don't want to give money to these groups that are backing Democrats who are pro-genocide. So it's true. That's a big problem. But it's also because you don't get victories from them. They don't win. They consistently don't win. And in the past, like, people blame the Green Party. You attack Jill Stein because she hasn't had victories. That's what AOC has done. But of course, AOC's had no victories. The difference is Jill Stein is trying. AOC isn't trying anymore. She's gone over to the dark side. So what my organizer says here is, we're about to go bust. All the groups like I work for and others, Public Citizen is another one. If you don't understand this, you're in denial about what's going on right now. And then they conclude by writing, and one last thing, the ability to recruit organizers and volunteers for a showdown against the fascists. What they're saying is, hey, we still are able to organize people against Trump, but that's not a sign of our strength. Most of the people who are campaigning now, who are making calls against Trump or for Harris, however you want to frame it, and against Stein too, right? Because we saw with Uncommitted, we make calls. We don't tell people to vote for Biden. What we tell them is vote against Trump and don't vote for a third party or emerging party. So we're telling them to vote for Harris. So there again, what this organizer is saying, hey, even when we're trying to recruit people to make calls, and some are, they're burnt out, they're miserable, and they're not going to do it again. Yeah. So this is where I come back to, well, then why are you even trying? Why aren't you trying to get people to rally behind Jill Stein? Why aren't we looking to the future to build something that really can make life better? And you know what the answer is? The answer isn't because she can't win. The answer is because that's not what we're paid to do. We raise money by fear-mongering, by scaring people about the evil monster Trump or whoever the Republican is. And oftentimes those fears are legit. But you've got to realize you've got two diabolical creatures right now against each other. And we can't, you want to scare people to say, oh, Trump is so awful. Okay, it's true. But what you're going to give them as a substitute is just as bad or almost as bad. And for some, it's worse. Got blocked yesterday on Facebook. Really, somebody I really like, I care about. And they posted, and I got to admit, I was trolly. I deserved it. I was kind of trolly, and I deserved, well, I don't want to say I deserved it. I didn't like it. Maybe I deserved it. But they posted something about how it was about reproductive rights, and it was something like, said something about you can't be a real man and vote for somebody who wants to take away your wife or your daughter's right to have, to control their own body. And I was like, can you be a real man and support women if you vote for somebody who's complicit in the genocide? Isn't that anti-woman also? So then the response was, yeah, but the alternative is so much worse, meaning as bad as Harris is, the Trump monster is worse. And I should have let it go. Again, this wasn't like one of those, because I think it's fine on Facebook when you have these groups like Halitics, right? Join the Halitics group on Facebook. I was told not everyone knows about the Halitics group. Join the Halitics group on Facebook if you haven't yet. I was told, or no, I wasn't told. It's fine in any of those groups, partisan, exchange, or I think even activist Dems, although they don't like it when you're critical of the Democrats. But in any of those sort of groups that are designed or, devised for political argument, obviously you have political arguments. But on people's home pages, Facebook, I think it is the better part of wisdom to let them post what they want, even if you don't agree with it. But this is an organizer, this is someone I care about, and I did want to challenge their view. So again, I was being trolly, and I said, hey, I didn't say it this way, but they're promoting Harris by telling us how bad Trump is, and I'm going to say, well, Harris is really bad too. And if you're going to invoke sexism or you're going to invoke the specter of female victims of Trump, I'm going to invoke the specter of the female victims of Harris. And then they didn't like that, and they blocked me. So I texted, I'm sad and disappointed to be blocked. And then they wrote back, I'm done with foolishness. No matter whether it's family or friends, this election is stressful enough. So I could have been offended by that term foolishness because they're dismissing my view. They're saying, what you have to say is foolish. For you to even think there's some sort of similarities between Trump and Harris or in terms of how bad they are. It's ridiculous for you to say that. And I didn't react. I was like, okay, I'm going to back off. Best you and yours. And then they added by, sharing a picture of a cute little moppet and writing, I have to think of my great-granddaughter. It's her future that is at stake. So I was not thrilled with that because the implication, we see this a lot, is, well, I have my concerns. You don't share my concerns. You have some sort of other, selfish or self-centered, view. Whereas I'm thinking of the future. I'm thinking of my child. So I responded and I just said, yeah, I'm thinking of your great-granddaughter too. Of course, I'm thinking of the future too. I'm thinking of little children too. But we have different answers to the same question. I throw in she's adorable, which, she is. So the question is, what's the right thing for us to do to hopefully have a future for our kids and for their kids and for their kids? What can we do? Who should we vote for? I'm not going to accept your framing that if my concern is children, therefore if your concern is children, you have to vote for Harris. I'm not going to accept that framing because my concern is children. If I was only concerned for myself, I wouldn't care at all who won. Because I'm fine and it's not going to change. My concern is my children. If they have children, their children, other people's children. And I believe very, very firmly, and I provide the evidence, that the best possible option for them by far is to elect Jill Stein president. And that electing either Trump or Harris will lead to terrible, terrible things for them. So it's just there we go. 240-283-7262. 240-283-7262. So yes, I know my number is low right now, and I am disappointed. That's what PT is commenting on. Door to door. There are pro Stein hosts who get more viewers for sure. I don't think they do a better job than I do, but I guess some people do. Anyway, I do what I do. I hope people like it. If they don't, they don't. One more story I really want to get to, because and this is, talking about listening to Republicans. I have found Bret Stephens to be one of the worst people on the planet. Is, completely rejecting all the evidence that the alleged weaponizing of rape by Hamas was largely a creature of Israeli Hasbara propaganda, that Israel is the country that weaponizes sex crimes, sexual assault. Guy who's, unwilling to even acknowledge Israel is committing war crimes. So I really dislike Bret Stephens. But thanks to Emogi. Emogi saying that my low count is not because I'm supporting Stein. But what is the reason, Emogi? I got to talk to you then. Why? What is the explanation for my low count? All right, one main culprit if Trump wins. And I wanted to read this, and I was very, very curious about it. So here's what, because I figured he was going to blame, honestly, I thought he was going to blame pro-Palestine protesters. I really did. I thought he was going to say that, they don't realize that Harris isn't even as bad, that Harris, has more concern for them than Trump, and why don't they get that? And this is one of her weaker areas, and yet they have to make the perfect the enemy of the good. I thought that's where Stephens was going to go because he's such an ardent Zionist. But that's not where he went, and I give him credit. So I sort of circled or squared in blue the arguments that he makes that may or may not be the reason for a Harris loss. The Electoral College, agree, very possibly it would be the Electoral College. White racism, I I'm not buying that one. I really don't. I don't think that's fair because many of the Trump voters are voting for, voted for Barack Obama. Maybe there's some people who would say, well, I'm not going to vote for the black woman versus the white guy. I guess. I don't think that's what motivates voters. Black sexism, that's the Obama argument, right? You're not feeling it. She's a black woman. You're not feeling it. No, not buying that one either. But yeah, maybe on the margins, a few. A few people say, I like Harris's policies better than Trump's, but she's black, so I'm going to vote for Trump. Maybe there's a couple of people like that. But that's what you have to believe. If you're going to say that the reason Harris lost is because there are white racists who would have voted for her if she were black, because that's what white racism would be, right? She lost because she's black, that an identical candidate who was white would have won. I don't think there are a lot of people out there who are saying to themselves, or who even of whom it's true, I would vote for Kamala Harris if she were white. I don't see that. If they prefer Trump, they prefer Trump, not because he's white. They just prefer Trump because they prefer him. And if they're real dyed-in-the-wool racists, they wouldn't have supported Harris anyway. All right, black sexism, again, same thing. I don't buy that. If you said to me, well, why do you think there's such a difference in the vote between men and women? I would say, well, I think there's sometimes priorities are different. I think there's a certain level of identity politics going on where some women want a woman president. To the extent that Trump gets votes from men because he's a man, I think Harris is getting votes from women because she's a woman. To the extent Trump is getting votes from some voters because he's white, probably Harris is getting some votes from blacks because she's black. So I don't think those are good reasons. And by the way, neither does Stevens. And then he throws a few, he notes, what would be the reasons that Democrats fell short in a race against a staggeringly flawed, widely detested opponent? That's completely true. This should be a cakewalk for Democrats. It should be. But then it should be a cakewalk for Republicans too, because Harris is so bad. So what are the reasons? Well, one, maybe she's not the strongest candidate. She's not a good candidate. I don't agree that Shapiro or Whitmer would be better, but no, she's not. The Democrats don't have good candidates. That's because the Democrats don't have good policies. But yeah, she's particularly bad. I agree. She's awkward. She's cringy. And then he goes on to say, but these excuses are problematic because they let off the main culprit, which is the way in which leading liberal voices practice politics today. So that is so true. Now, is that the major cause? I don't know. I think the major cause is the policies. The Democratic policies suck. Democratic policies have hurt people. And to the extent that they've had good or enunciated good policies, they have never pursued them. This is the way, according to Stevens, and it's accurate. The Democratic liberal class, exemplified by New York Times editorial writers, of whom he is one, practice politics. The politics of condescension, typified by Obama's suggestion that black men, I mean, it is kind of funny, might be reluctant to vote for Harris because they aren't feeling the idea of a woman president. But then he makes the point, hey, black workers did better under Trump's presidency. They were making more money. They were seeing an increase in real wages, which hasn't happened under Biden. So rather than come up with some insult, condescension, recognize, yeah, we haven't done as well for African-American workers as we should. But no, Democrats never take ownership of their losses unless the loser is a real left-wing progressive. That's the only time. What other reasons does Stevens think would be legit? Well, the politics, and he just said it's the same thing, condescension, name calling, right? It's It's exactly the same. He said condescension, but he's saying condescension towards your own voters or people you think should be your voters. So black men who should vote Democratic, we're going to condescend to you and say the reason you're not feeling it is because you're sexist. And then those on the other side, and I see this is all the time. This is everything on social media. Let's insult Trump voters. They're deplorable. Remember Hillary's famous line? They're deplorable. They're racist. They're misogynist. They're weird, phobic. All true. Supporters of fascists. These are all the ways. I don't mean those insults are true. I mean, that's what you do. That's what those of you who post on social media who attack Trump often do. Well, stop it. Listen to them. Talk to them. Hear what they have to say. Don't necessarily agree with them. But if they tell you their lives are crappy and Trump's policies made them better, well, then why? Maybe there's something to that. And I love what he says here. Trump supporters overwhelmingly are people who think the Biden-Harris years have been bad for them and the country. Maybe liberals should try to engage with the argument without belittling person. Okay, Emoji's got some more stuff in there. I'll try to get into it maybe after the program because I want to get through this. And did we do? Yeah, we did condescension. We did name calling. So here's gaslighting. This is so true. I love this comment. MSNBC talking who repeatedly vouched for Biden's mental acuity when obviously he wasn't. And by the way, this is exactly what Harris does too. Oh, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. He's perfect. He's a lot better. He's a lot smarter and sharper than Trump. And this is completely accurate. Now, some of the same pundits are extolling Harris as brilliant and experienced, which may be true, but is hardly evidenced by her inability to move beyond a limited set of talking points or the fact that it's difficult to think of a political or legislative accomplishment of which she was a prime mover. That is completely accurate. And she was not a distinguished attorney general in the state of California. Much of what she did was derivative of what other attorneys general did at the same time, such as the settlement with the banksters, which wasn't as strong as it should have been. She basically followed the lead of her brother-in-law, Tony West, I believe it's her brother-in-law, and also had to, take some marching orders from Gavin Newsom. Newsom was right. He said, hey, this isn't good enough. You're proposing a settlement that lets these crooks off the hook. You got to be a little tougher. And she finally grudgingly agreed to do that. But it wasn't her hard work that brought about an kind of okay settlement with the crooks who brought down the economy across the country and across the globe, really. So, yeah, Stevens is right. She is not accomplished. She is not showing herself to be intelligent. So this is all spot friggin' on. And one more point. The politics of Hyannis. Do liberals really believe, and this is so true, there are no lingering resentments over the way Harris secured her nomination without any votes? No primary voters said we want Kamala Harris. She was just anointed because her policies align perfectly with Democratic elites. That's why. And she's going to do what they tell her. She's not an independent thinker. So, perfect for them, but crappy for us. I was thinking when I read that, I was so glad Stephen said that because this went exactly where I went on Monday with Arlen, with this commentary from the LA Times where Arlen recommended this post, or this piece rather. What more does Harris have to do to win? Is a very, very pro-Kamala Harris piece. And the first quote in it that I saw, I mean, it just made me like, what are you talking about? Just put this up right here. There's a video clip where Harris says you never have to ask anyone permission to lead. When you want to lead, just lead. Exactly. She didn't ask voters permission to be the Democratic nominee. No one asked them if it was okay for her to be the nominee. She just became the nominee. And of course, we're pissed off about that. So it is what it is. Do I think in the end Harris probably pulls this one out? Yeah, I kind of do. Am I happy about it? Nope. I'm no happier than I would be, or no more unhappy than I would be if Trump won. I can only, I vote for Jill Stein. Emogi, thank you for the support. Shade or PT, thank you for the commentary. It's always appreciated, positive or negative. I will return tomorrow, Thursday. Have a great afternoon, and stay safe, as some commentator says. I kind of like that, stay safe.